and welcome to a new episode of the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And we're talking about Virginia football recruiting this week. So before we get going, kind of breaking down not only the junior day that happened last weekend, but also looking forward to this weekend's visitors. And of course, talking about all the early enrollees on grounds. Why don't you go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel? Click on the video and click like on the video, but also ring the bell so that you are notified whenever there is a new video. But also subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcast. And please rate us and leave us a review that will help us continue to grow this podcast and this YouTube channel, which means more content for you down the line. So let's get to it because honestly, it's been a pretty busy few days for the Virginia football program. Of course, they got a big news where they hired a new offensive line coach in Coach Heffernan. He's coming from Stanford, so he was the offensive line coach there before David Shaw decided to step down from his position. And then Tony Elliott and him started talking about 10 days ago, and then things moved forward pretty quickly, and now he is the new Virginia offensive line coach. That is a very solid get for the Cavaliers when you look at his experience coaching at a program like Stanford, who has its own academic restrictions, per se, when you look at recruits. They're recruiting the same type of athlete that Virginia does. Often, honestly, they're going head-to-head for a couple of the athletes. And speaking of going head-to-head for a couple of athletes with Stanford, Heffernan is also very familiar with the Virginia area. Actually, he's recruited a few Woodbury Forest guys. He's also recruited a few guys in the state of Virginia. So this is a very good get for Virginia. Not only are you getting a former Power 5 coach coming in from a Power 5 program to Virginia, another Power 5 program, you have someone who has NFL experience, which is a plus when you look at what these guys want in the next level. They want someone who has NFL experience to prepare them for that jump from college football to the professional leagues. And then you also have someone who understands what type of kid Virginia is recruiting and looking for on the trail, but also he understands the area. Because once again, Tony Elliott and his staff also want to make sure that they continue to make inroads in the state of Virginia. So I can't emphasize that enough, that was a good hire. And it also was a timely one because they are continuing to recruit and evaluate offensive linemen to join this 2023 class. Obviously, we're going to talk about this next weekend's visitors, which includes an offensive lineman taking an official visit this weekend, but they're also evaluating other options, including a transfer and also another high school offensive lineman. So again, we're going to be talking about all that moving forward, but I wanted to talk about the bigger news coming out of the weekend. But also, although Heffernan was not part of the contingent of staff members that was available to talk to recruits on Saturday for Junior Day, this was a very, very successful Junior Day for Virginia. I want to stress that because last year they did get some guys on campus. Don't forget, they had top 24/7 linebacker Chris Jones before he was a top 24/7 linebacker. You also have Heaven Brown Schuler, the very talented defensive lineman from Georgia, the 4-star. He was a 4-star at that point as well. So they did have some big recruits, Mekhi White, Chance Wiggins, all that. But this one was another very solid effort because of who was on ground. You know, I think since I've arrived on the beat, I think one of the biggest names that I continuously get asked about is Zaire Rayner. Obviously, his father is a legend among Virginia circles. He played at UVA. He's now a high school recruit. He has a Virginia offer. He was on grounds. So they hosted Virginia Legacies, which is something that Virginia has struggled to bring to UVA. They not only welcome Rayner, they also welcome DJ Tolliver. He is obviously his father and uncle are also former alums of Virginia. So again, this is the type of guys that Virginia wants to get in early. They also hosted a number of other very top guys, including top 24/7 linebacker Gabriel Williams. And you're noticing a pattern here. And I want to emphasize this because I feel like he does not get enough credit on the recruiting trail. When you often see high-level linebackers on grounds, you got to give credit where credit's due. That is Clint Sintum. He not only secured Cameron Robinson when Cameron was on the edge, him alongside the recruiting staff emphasized that family feel, getting all the coaches at that basketball game, at that in-home, secured the visit. But Clint Sintum was the leader of that recruitment from start to finish. Chris Jones still has Virginia among his schools that he's considering. Again, Clint Sintom. Gabriel Williams. The reason why he also is considering Virginia is Clint Sintom. I can't him and Kevin Downing have been the bright stars of the last recruiting cycle. So I'm curious to see how they make the jump this recruiting cycle. And again, a lot of the same, you hear a lot about them a lot, especially with Kevin Downing taking a bigger approach, it seems, in the area of Richmond. Zaire Rayner, he was one that mentioned Coach Downing is one of the guys that is his area recruiter. So he's talking to him as well. And I'm looking over the list here because I don't have the best memory anymore. I think kids kind of zap that long-term memory out of you from sleep deprivation. So if you're on YouTube, I'm looking at the visitor list. That's why I keep looking down. So again, we mentioned Zaire Rayner, Gabriel Williams, DJ Tolliver, 4-star corner Assad Brown, defensive back. Those are the guys that had offers. Athlete Ethan Minter, that is from Thomas Dale, another school that if you're Virginia, you want to get inside. So I'm going to actually probably be easier if I actually make this list available to y'all on here, because it's kind of overwhelming to see all these guys and not actually see the list. So I'm going to bring that up on screen. So this is the list. And again, if you're a Wahoo's 24/7 subscriber, this is the type of content that you will see on a daily basis, is like VIP scoops of which athletes are on grounds, where the coaches are. And we generally have up-to-date information. Like we know where the coaches are today. We actually reported on it earlier. So again, these are the type of content that we post there. So again, a very good group of guys. And then on that list, Eric Mensah is also a top recruit that was on grounds. He has a Virginia offer. He is Chris Jones's teammate. Chris Jones is at Penn State this weekend. It's going to be hard to get Chris Jones. I know I said Clint Sintom is doing a good job there. It's going to be hard to get him. But again, it's about being mentioned. It's about getting him on grounds. He was on grounds last year, I think 3 times. He was Junior Day, Cavalier Cookout in June, and then for a game. So that's 3 times. So getting him maybe in this month is probably a high priority here. Mekhi Byerson is also a good local talent. He's been at Virginia quite a few times now. He picked up the offer early on. Tony Elliott went to his game. I think it was the first game of the season. Tony Elliott was there. He was offered pretty quickly after that. He came to, I believe, 2 games this past season, and then he's back here for Junior Day. There's a lot of momentum with Virginia here with the Manchester edge standout. So that's one that we're continually to follow. And Brian Doan, our recruiting analyst, is actually going to have a story on Byerson later on Tuesday afternoon. He spoke to Byerson, and he's going to talk about that visit with us. We actually have a few visitor reactions too on the site. So again, he's one to keep an eye on. I would say we're not on commit watch or anything, but I like where Virginia is with Byerson at the moment. Ethan Minter is a quarterback at Thomas Dale. I was talking about him a little while ago. He has an offer, but they've offered as an athlete. I see him more on the defensive side of the ball for Virginia, possibly more in a safety position. Coach Radzinski is really keeping an eye on him. His head recruiter is now Downing. So again, Downing having more of an effect on recruiting in that region. Jamil Allen is an offensive lineman out of the state of Georgia. He picked up an offer over the weekend. He didn't get the chance to talk to Terry Heffernan, but he already knew about Heffernan because he talked to Heffernan when he was at Stanford. So again, that's someone else to look forward to. Trying to think of what else. A lot of the other guys are guys that Virginia are evaluating, guys like Kamori Dixon from George Washington, linebacker Brandon Binkowski, wide receiver Trenton Clown from the state of North Carolina, offensive lineman Keshawn Anderson, defensive lineman Kendall Howard, both teammates of TJ Tolliver, and then edge rusher Camden Londenslager he's a 2025 class, but he's from McDonough, and a school that Virginia wants to get in. That's a type of athlete, type of full body student that fits that Virginia profile. He visited, and he's one to keep an eye on. He's a good kid, good looking kid. That he doesn't have an offer right now, but I would be kind of shocked if Virginia doesn't eventually offer. And so, yeah, again, this is a very impressive list. And I didn't even mention one of the bigger names, quarterback Christian Martin, Highland Springs signal caller. He was also on grounds. Again, this is a very impressive list. This is the type of list that creates buzz around a program. this is something where Brian Doan and I have spoken a number of times on this podcast. You need this type of momentum. Virginia Tech has been doing this for a while now, is getting all these top Virginia players in on grounds, on campus, where have you. And Virginia, although had like a little bit here, a little bit there, didn't have that big event that really got all these top 20 guys on grounds. And they did in junior day. So this is a very good momentum push. And again, this is what I've been saying since I arrived, since Tony Elliott arrived. 2023 was going to be rough. 2024 is where we judge. And the first impression, good first junior day. So let's see how they do in 2 weeks when they have another junior day on the 28th. And then this weekend is when they'll have an official visit weekend. So we're going to talk about the 2023 class in more detail a little more after the break. But before we get to the break, this week, although they welcomed several visitors, it was also a chance to welcome early enrollees. So they had 2 early enrollees from the high school ranks, Anthony Colandrea, quarterback out of Florida, and Jaden Gibson, the wide receiver out of Georgia. But the big news is the transfers. They were able to get on grounds already. So the first day on Friday, they welcomed 3 of them. They welcomed quarterback Tony Muskett. They welcomed running back Kobe Pace. And they welcomed a more, I guess, one of the latest commits, cornerback Cam Kelly. Those were 3 the guys that were able to enroll on the first day availability on Friday. Then they picked up 2 more pledges. They picked up Ugana Nana and Taven Kyle. Those 2 committed towards the end of last week, with Tavon committing on Sunday evening. They're also in Charlottesville. And then Malik Washington also made his way to ground. So that's 6 guys that could make an impact on that depth chart pretty quickly for Virginia at positions of need, at corner, at offensive line, and at wide receiver. And of course, with Brennan Armstrong gone to NC State at quarterback. So getting those guys in before winter workouts start on Wednesday, since the first team meeting is Tuesday evening. So getting that in there before that first winter workout on Wednesday is huge for Virginia, because those are the guys that are going to be battling for those first team reps. So I know I probably gave you so much information. There was a lot to actually talk about on recruiting, on the recruiting front. So that's why we didn't have, I was playing with the idea to bring Brian Doan on the podcast today, and also Chris Hummer, our national college football writer when it comes to the transfer portal. But I felt there was so much information to kind of just talk about as first Virginia recruiting, especially with everything picked up. So wanted to break down kind of the overview of where we are and what we're going to do moving forward as far as like coverage and what Virginia is doing, so that makes it a little easier when I do bring in guests, so that you understand what the stories are currently. So that is junior day covered, new offensive line coach covered, and also the early enrollees that are currently on grounds. And I expect each one of them to fight for playing time. Ugana Nana is the one that has a question mark, since he didn't feature much for Houston, and he has 3 years of eligibility. So, but the other ones are a little more veteran, and I figured those are the guys that would push the guys currently on the roster a little bit for those starting roles. If you notice, Kyle, Nana, and Kelly do not have their transfer rankings yet on 24/7. We are currently working to get those updated. So again, that's those part of the news. So we're going to take a quick break so I can drink some water. But also just so we can take a little breather. And on the way back, we're going to talk about what's next in 2023, because Virginia is not done. They're still looking to add offensive linemen and DBs. Wide receivers kind of being put in the back burner. I have a source that basically they're saying they're going to focus on corner and offensive line. So that's what we're going to talk about when we get back. And welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And boy, there was a lot to talk about in that first half of the show. And there's still a lot to talk about, because although there was that early signing day in December where Virginia was able to sign a good amount of bodies to their class and a lot of good prospects, they still needed to work in order to secure a few more guys before the February signing period. And honestly, the transfers, again, don't follow that signing day, I guess, timeline. They were able to add 3 more transfers during this period after December. Obviously, they lost Dejon Parker during the time where they didn't have an O-line coach, but they were able to add Nana Kelly and Kyle during that period as well at the positions of need. But they are not done. Remember, prior to Dejon Parker flipping to Iowa State, no, flipping to Iowa, not Iowa State, flipping to Iowa, Virginia was still looking to possibly add as much as 3 offensive linemen. Tony Elliott says he likes to have 15, and they were at 12. So when Dejon Parker left, they were down to 11. So now they've added Nana, so we're back to 12. So they're kind of where they were on early signing day. So theoretically, that means they were still looking at 3. Now, the staff is evaluating several options, and it seems like they kind of are more open to possibly adding bodies in the high school front. Now, initially, it looked like they were going to try to add more experience by going to the portal route, and that's true. They're still looking at the portal. They're looking at the ODU transfer. I have a reliable source that says they've reached out to him, and that includes Heffernan. So they are looking at transfers, but they're also looking at high schoolers. Now, one particular offensive lineman that we have confirmed interest, obviously they've confirmed themselves since they offered him, is James Mejia. He's from Oklahoma. He picked up an offer, and he tells us that he will be taking an official visit. So that is who we're watching right now. So Mejia was offered by offensive corner Des Kitchings. He was the one that kind of took over the recruiting of the offensive line when he didn't have a head coach, with 2J leaving to NC State. And Des Kitchings actually went on the first day of the contact period. He went in home with Mejia securing that official visit. Virginia can do more in-home, so that gives a chance for Heffernan to have an in-home with him. And obviously, Tony Elliott has not done an in-home with them yet, so that is also an opportunity for them to recruit even after he visits grounds. So right now, so that is the visit that we're looking for this week. He's also going to visit Tulsa and North Texas. So that is who we're watching right now as far as an offensive line target. They are evaluating other guys, including athletes that are committed to elsewhere. So they're not done evaluating O-line. It's something like I've been repeating myself quite often when it comes to Virginia's procedures and process when it comes to the offers, is that they do evaluate these guys quite extensively. They talk to you for a while. So if you're a recruit that's being recruited by Virginia, you're often talking to them quite a bit before they extend an offer. So they're trying to recruit the entire student athlete. So the way the thought process there is, not only you have to look at transcripts, they generally do not want to offer you unless that the transcripts is on par with what they expect. At least there's a game plan to get you qualified to Virginia. That doesn't mean you're able to get qualified, but the game plan is there and the likelihood is high. So once the transcripts are in, then they have the ability to offer. But they also want to make sure the personalities match with them, and what the goals are basically the same, kind of getting that motto who, and kind of in that regard. So that's the process. So sometimes that takes a while. Like there's one prospect that they were, evaluating right now at DB, where Coach Rodzinski is going to see in person this week. If Coach Rodzinski likes the look of him, likes the feel of face-to-face, that's when they extend the offer. So again, it's a process. Speaking of DB, obviously they added Cam Kelly, which is a good recruit. I could see him at safety, although I think Virginia's looking at a corner right now, but I could still see him at safety, although safety has a very veteran group for Virginia. Obviously, you have Antonio Clares, Eunice Sanker, and Cohen King all returning, and you got Langston Long, although I could see Long kind of moving to linebacker. It's that there's nothing official there. It's just that I feel like Long's frame is built for that. So maybe you can see that kind of process there. And if that's the case, I can see Cam Kelly kind of going that nickel, maybe safety role. But they also added Tavon Tao at corner. Don't forget, you're losing Anthony Johnson and also Fentrell Cypress. So those are big shoes to fill. But they still want more depth at that position. They didn't get as many guys that they wanted. So I can see them adding 1 to 2 more DBs. So right now, according to a source, they're looking at 3 DBs currently. We have confirmed one, Devin Clark out of Georgia and Marietta. That's why Coach Rodzinski's in Georgia this week. Well, Georgia on Tuesday. But then he'll be able to go to 2 other defensive backs' homes in the next 2 days. those are good and crucial visits to figure out what their next game plan is as far as who they will offer next at DB. So we're confirming those 2 names. We have been told those names, but we aren't reporting them yet because we're confirming basically where they are with these 2 athletes before we report their names. Because again, it's a process. Again, these where are they in these process? Generally, I'm okay of saying like these are the guys they're evaluating, but when we're trying to nail down where they are in the process, like how close are they offering, we've heard that there's 3 student athletes that they're close to offering or just kind of evaluating that. So we've confirmed 1, Devin Clark, and we're looking at 2 others. I can tell you they're both from southern states, kind of like in that Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama region, the Southeast. That's where they're recruiting a lot from, which is very, 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 very smart because it's overloaded with talent. And not everybody will go to Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, you name it. Not all of them will end in the Southeastern Conference. So going there and going to see some of the underrated guys is a very, very good and very smart plan for the Cavaliers. So that's the plan moving forward. Corner, safety, well, mostly corner. So corner and offensive line. That's your big wish list before that February signing period. And then possibly when you get to the transfer portal again, because don't forget the transfer portal will close on Wednesday on the 18th. So they're going to move away from the transfer portal a little bit, and they're going to focus on high school recruits again, spring evaluation visits and all that. And then the transfer portal will open once again after spring football, and that's when you might see maybe a wide receiver being looked at because, again, they're going to examine what they have in spring, and then possibly some Virginia players will enter the portal as well. So it kind of goes both ways. So that's that. So we've covered a lot in this podcast. I just wanted to kind of break down the big headlines as far as Virginia recruiting, their impressive haul in junior day, getting a lot of those guys on grounds, obviously hiring an O-line coach, early enrollees already on grounds, and then what's next for the 2023 class. So this is kind of like your Cliff Notes version of Virginia football recruiting. So if you want the full in-depth version of the Virginia recruiting, make sure you subscribe to us on Wahoo's 24/7, where I give you a little bit more of the in-depth coverage of where Virginia coaches are. We have visitor lists, who's visiting when. We also tell you when most of the time we can gather where recruits are visiting elsewhere, like Penn State had a very big junior day. Virginia Tech is slated to have a very big junior day this weekend and also the last weekend as well. And they're going to be competing head-to-head with Virginia Tech on that junior day. So again, we'll be keeping a monitor of all that. So if you ever have any questions, you can just follow me on @JackieFran_. And if you're a subscriber on Wahoo's 24/7, just leave me a question on our message board. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And we'll be right back here on Thursday to talk about Virginia men's and women's basketball. So we'll see you then.